What's going on, gamers? We have to talk about it. We're going to cut immediately to the chase. I'm here to overanalyze the Metroid Prime 4 Beyond trailer. I have no idea how long this is going to be. I'm just here to nitpick the crap out of this and see what we can dig from the very limited details that we have. So let's get started. So, immediately going to pause here. There has been a handful of talk as to the 20X9, the year for this. Some people are already kind of jumping and theorizing that this somehow will be after Super Metroid, but there isn't really, to my current understanding, there isn't really any hard evidence showing where this sits in the timeline. Just no clue. I mean, just from understanding and knowing the different ending cutscenes, or like the little secret cutscenes at the end of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption and Metroid Federation Force, it has to come after those. So that's kind of all that we can for sure say about it. But it would be interesting if it was a few games afterwards. If it wasn't immediately after Metroid Federation Force, and if it was after Super Metroid, that'd be a bit later down in the timeline. Which I'm just thinking, I'm like, that's a long, I don't know, that's at least a decent amount of time. Supposedly the first game, if I remember correctly, is supposed to be based in 20X5, and most people are deducing that Super Metroid is in the cosmic year of 20X7. So somewhere after that. Hopefully we'll get more information, probably sometime next year, or maybe in another direct when they talk about Switch 2. But at least in terms of the timeline, that's all that we can really think of. This Galactic Federation Research Facility, when I first watched this, I thought it mentioned a region, but I guess I'm just crazy. So we don't really have any idea where this is. It's most likely it's a new planet, but we'll go ahead and stretch a little bit further here. So immediately with the ship, it's the Metroid Prime 3 Corruption model for the ship. I'm thinking it's honestly just a lighting sort of a thing going on here as to why the colors look different. I mean, like, you might be seeing it differently. Who knows? Maybe I'm just colorblind or something. But I'm looking at this and it's like there's like the green window, red decals, and like the main body paint is almost kind of like a really like shiny silver almost. Like, but then once we go a little bit further here, and without kind of in the sections without like the crazy lighting, the yellow on Samus's suit, which, I mean, looks pretty great, by the way. We'll get a better view here in a sec. It almost has a very similar color. So that's why I'm thinking it's just the lighting that looks a bit different, so that I go to the deduction that this is just the same ship from Corruption. But there's one major difference here. If you're like me and are super detail-oriented, Metroid Prime Corruption didn't have the top hatch. If we kind of... Oh, whoop, did not mean to go back several seconds. Hold on here. Let me get to the spot. If we stop right here, this is like the normal hatch that you would use. The ship itself, like these little, like the tips of the wings, would fold downward to be like points of contact with the ground. And then the platform would stick out to be the third point of contact so that the ship could stand on its own. But now in this game, either they've changed that, or maybe for some reason there's just another access port. Not sure. But, you know, some things with the ship could be cool. Could also potentially, that could bring back, like, the ship missiles and the ship grapple. I mean, maybe. I mean, if they do, hopefully there's kind of more to it than what Metroid Prime 3 Corruption had to offer. You know what I mean? There's only like a couple instances in that game where you really used the missiles or needed them for progression. If this game has ship upgrades, or maybe even different ship upgrades, that's entirely a possibility. Maybe they'll be more utilized, or the ship will play more of a part than it did in Corruption, besides just being a mobile save station of flying to and from planets. But just the look of the suit, I mean, I think it looks fantastic here. Shoot. I'm not doing this in any sort of script or anything, so sorry if I'm kind of like rambling and bouncing around, but here, bear with me here. We gotta play the fanfare, because of course the fanfare is like, oh my god, it really, I love how it uses like more sort of, like choir based, and has that little bit of a whistle in the background to make it sound more like alien-ish, or like foreign, kind of, you know what I mean? Well, I'll just play it, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. It still has that Metroid feel to it, which is so good. But it's a little bit different, a little bit more high def, a lot more, like I said, kind of like the choir, a lot more of like, it sounds like singing in it. And overall, just the suit itself, too, is a lot sleeker, a lot less of like the big, bulky, like mech sort of idea, like with Prime 1 and Prime 2. I mean, I'll always have a soft spot for like the really giant shoulders, like overly massive and kind of unequal proportions from the first game. But you gotta admit, this is cool. I mean, come on. She looks so good in these new graphics, and whatever resolution that ends up being, I'm sure she's just going to look fantastic. And then the new design still really keeps that Echo's Corruption suit change, which is why I don't think it's like super late in the timeline. Some people think it might be after Dread, like the newest game, but this just makes me think it's kind of at least somewhere in the middle, maybe like first half, somewhere in the first half. That's where I would think. And that's just immediately where it makes the most sense, but once we eventually get more information, or once the game comes out, obviously we'll figure out for sure. But immediately on here that I'm seeing some differences are the shoulders. A little bit smaller. Overall, a bit of a slimmer physique, so she looks a little bit more like feminine, like it's kind of easier to tell. Or like there's some more kind of like feminine qualities, I guess, to her suit, which I think is cool, instead of it just being like a giant robo suit. I don't immediately see anything. If I maybe like back up a little bit more, I'm not seeing anything on the left arm yet. Not sure if, I mean, I guess it's entirely possible that they don't have the grapple beam, but I mean, all of the Prime games have the grapple beam in one way or another, and a good handful of the 2D games too have the grapple beam in one way or another. So I wonder if they'll maybe go in like a grapple lasso kind of a way, or they'll change some of the hand colors, and like the palm or like the back of the hand node here is like the lasso, or what we're using to kind of grapple around. Or maybe if we'll get like the traditional like little extra gear piece that almost looks like a cannon on like the back of the forearm to be a grapple. Also, the arm cannon looks great. Well, later on when it comes to missiles, I'll show it has more of the Prime 2, Prime 3 shaping, or like opening of the barrel for the missile, so it's not like a big flat like plus sign when missiles get shot, where these parts kind of like twist at a 90-degree angle. It's more of they get pushed outward and separate, so it still has that sort of like barrel kind of, like it doesn't open up like a flower petal, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I mean, that's cool. It's nice that they kept that little detail there, but also it looks a little bit more ergonomic. What I mean by this is that there's like the cutout for the arm that's way up here. I know that my cursor's a little bit small, but there's like a bigger cutout for the arm, so it makes more sense for the gun to bend and be straight upward, or at least be bending at like 45, 90-degree angles, like while we're like pointing and using it in combat. You know what I mean? I mean, before, with the older designs, the cannon, like there was the joint on the elbow and then the cannon starts. But now this one's a bit backed up a hair more for some reason, not sure why, but just little changes, little details here and there. And since they backed up the arm cannon a bit, so I guess it's not just like a giant like pole for an arm. It's a little bit shorter, but the cannon I guess is like probably relatively the same length, and then they do the little arm cutout for it to make ergonomic sense, which I think is cool. And also, like I said, everything is kind of relatively slimmed out a bit. We don't have these overly massive biceps coming out of the gigantic planet-sized shoulders. It's a little bit more proportional. I mean, of course, these shoulders are still massive, right? And she still is a pretty buff, strong, independent woman. So great there. Love to see that. But it's a lot more proportional. Also, she has more of a neck, which I think is nice. I do like having that separation there, so it's not just like, it doesn't turn from like breastplate, chest piece to head. There's actually a little bit of connection there. So it doesn't look like a little stubby neck. But yeah, I think overall, everything's looking pretty good. Graphics are looking great, but let's continue on with the trailer. And then, yeah, you can kind of see, sorry, I had to stop one more time. See more of like the green accents, traditional like green lighting that's going on here on the shoulders and a little bit on the front as well. Like the ribbing of the thoracial region is coming back. I think that looks pretty cool. And I've always kind of liked that detail of like it's a bit of like an exoskeleton. So hence the little kind of like rib pieces and like the skull, what am I talking about? Like the spinal column kind of being the way that it is. I just think it looks cool to give it more like an exoskeleton sort of a vibe, or like an armor, an outer armor. But then now also like the gapping of the neck, I think looks pretty good too. It feels like it's a lot more. What am I trying to say here? It makes more sense. Like now she can, instead of like, oh, we're constantly bumping into like pieces of the armor or like the jet boosters here. There's actually some room to tilt and angle your head in multiple directions. Like it looks like it makes more sense, which is always a great thing to have. But like I said, I'll always be partial to the older suit designs. But now looking at this more and seeing it after I had the crazy hype early in the morning during the direct, it makes a lot more ergonomical sense. I can't talk. I'm so sorry. So I think that's always just a big plus. It just makes a lot more sense and looks a lot more like clean. But then we jump into the heads-up display. I mean, obviously we're going to be in some sort of giant fight here with the space pirates, and we're going to show a little bit of combat here. But there's a few differences that really, it's in between of like, it kind of clears up and creates a lot more space, a lot more like empty space to kind of see what's going on in the world. But it kind of clutters some things up at the same time, or at least it might. Also, there's like a little bit of like almost missing information at the moment. Who knows if this will be the final product? I'm, of course, we're making a big assumption that this is what the game is going to look like when it eventually releases sometime in 2025 next year. But if we start with the top left corner, there used to be that hazard bar that showed kind of like strengths of, or at least like how close you were to some sort of hazard like poison or lava, or in the Prime's case is like the radiation from the phazon. Now it's just been turned down to a little beacon here. So I'm not really sure how I feel about that yet. I'll kind of keep an eye on that in the trailer. I don't think they really show that off, or it doesn't light up or it gets pinged during this trailer. There doesn't really seem to be any like environmental hazards. Maybe it gets triggered on like a little piece of like fire or something from the battlefield, from the warscape. But oh, excuse me, I'm a little burpy right now. But I don't recall this going off here up top. But that's the new hazard meter. Used to be that big old bar on the whole left of the screen. Now it's kind of a little smaller space. So crammed it down a little bit. I mean, I get it. I'll always be biased towards the original stuff, of course, but I get why they slimmed it down. Takes up a lot less space. There's a lot more like stuff to see here, and the overall interface looks pretty clean. The motion sensor will get a lot more work, and we'll get a lot more work and play out of that later on in the trailer. I originally looked at the health bar here, and obviously there's a lot of room for some future energy tanks, depending on how big the squares are. Looks great. I originally thought that the individual little tick marks here counted up to 50, figuring that it goes up to 100 or 99 energy, and then each little box represents like 2 health. Well, apparently there are, I believe we counted, myself and my girlfriend, I believe we counted, mainly giving her the credit, 54 up here. We got 54. So my little theory of it being 50 for 2 health is immediately out the window, but different stylized choice for them being kind of sectioned off like that. We'll have to see in the future, because she doesn't get hurt. The player playing this in the demo doesn't get hurt in the whole combat interactions. So we don't see the health go down, or we see any damage taken by the player. There's also the map. Of course, big difference here is that the map is a different color. Has more of a, instead of the giant green with red tip like polygon pointer, we have a bit more of like a futuristic like compass pointer on here. Speaking of compass, there also is an actual compass on here with directions, instead of normally you'd have to go onto the mini map menu. We'll like bring up the map in the main screen, and that would show you a compass with just wherever north was, but that never really was used specifically for gameplay purposes, just to help with navigation. So it would be not exactly a new addition, but just it's more detailed. It's now accessed at all times because it's now here in the combat visor. So interesting to see if they'll maybe incorporate the directions a bit more now, since we have north, south, east, west, and the diagonal directions as well. But it's a small little detail that I always would appreciate. In the bottom right, we don't have the beams anymore. I mean, in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, there was no beam switching at all either. So it's potential this game could be going the beam stacking route. I mean, in my opinion, I would hope not. I just like having multiple beams to kind of switch through. That's always been my dig, but I mean, older Metroids have always done the beam stacking method, or at least maybe they might pull a Super Metroid. Maybe they'll be like one beam at a time, but maybe you can mix and match them. That would be cool. Haven't seen that in a Prime game or like in a 3D Metroid game. So that could be a cool and interesting idea to incorporate that into the first-person perspective, but that would potentially lead to a lot of pausing and clicking on and off items, which if they're wanting to go for maybe a more faster pace and a smoother experience, that wouldn't lead to that very easily. But besides the point, at the very least, what we can see here and confirm today is that there is no beam selector in the bottom right. There's a missile count. And at least if we're assuming this is the start and the introduction of the game, there's 30 missiles. A little bit different, normally you start with 15, so no big deal. But then that leads us to the bottom left of the screen, which I left for last on purpose. A lot of people are in the same boat that I am. I'm thinking that this is directional inputs, so D-pad for maybe like utility weapons probably isn't really the right term for it, but like extra weapons, like B grade weapons. Like if we're saying that beams are A grade and that's like the main weapon that we're using here, everything that's like ammo oriented, like missiles, maybe beam combos, maybe something that's like a seeker missile, or maybe the storm missile variation like from Dread is here. Other like extra weapons that are maybe ammunition based or missile based, we're probably going to go here, and instead of having to do like some combo button press, or instead of like having to charge and then press the missile button to use a super missile, maybe the super missile is just its own item in this game. Maybe we go for missile launcher, we select up on the D-pad to do super missiles, and then now there's like a cooldown between super missiles still, so you're not just absolutely blowing everything away in your path. instantaneously. But maybe now, instead of it shooting missiles with just the button, with just whatever button you use the extra missile launcher, maybe now you just use that same button when it's selected for a different weapon. You know what I mean? So I hope, again, I'm sorry for the ramble, but I hope that kind of makes sense. So like, let's say we had like seeker missiles and lower in the D-pad. Now we'll just select those and then we'll press the missile button, and that'll kind of bring up like that different targeting reticule so that we can select different targets, and then we'll press it again to shoot after we've selected like 5 targets or however many we wanted to aim at. So maybe things like that. Not sure what else could be here. I mean, there's probably going to be some new weapons that we just have no idea about, but they don't really show off any new power-ups in this. They just show off some new areas and some space pirate fights, but that's about it for now. And then we have the main arm cannon look, which they add this little green line here, which is just, more of the green decals, which looks cool. You get to see that bit of a cutout for the arm that's right here, and a little bit of the raindrop kind of aesthetic and detail that they added in Metroid Prime Remastered, which makes a great return here, but super minor. Also, it's kind of hard to see, but there's like the raindroplets on the visor as well. So always love to see quality little details here and there throughout the game, just while the game is playing, and it's like all these details happening in the background is always just fantastic. So we've landed on some sort of planet, which is a Galactic Federation research facility, and we'll get more into that here in a sec, but it's obviously being attacked by some space pirates. Then we get to see some combat. So immediately we'll be jumping to some things that have some better examples later on. But we have the crosshair. There's going to be some lock on here, and we can see that we can strafe back and forth, just like before, which is great. Always super fun. I think the lock on looks pretty great. We got like the red and the white symbols, and it's minimal and clean, but it still gives off that, I'm locking onto a target kind of a thing, which now brings us back to the radar. I think this is going to be the best radar in any Prime game that we have ever seen, because it seems like it's in all 3 of the Prime games, the radar kind of has different sizes, different ranges, different shapes to it. It's the blue circle. We have like the direction or like the POV that we can see as the player at a time. And then there's going to be, normally there's just orange dots. They just were orange dots of varying sizes that were in here to show something moving. There wasn't any, can't reference it right here at the moment, but I don't recall there being any like friend or foe like differentiation when it came to the blips on the motion sensor. But we have some little red diamonds, traditional kind of like enemy blips on a radar like this, but also we have like the hit marker sort of symbol that's in yellow, orange, or that color there, to show what we're locking onto, which is a interesting change. Never have had that before, but it's a good little quality change. Nice little detail there to show kind of relatively how far your target is in the space, as well as just seeing it in front of you as well. Just some nice little details that are added in the trailer here. Always makes me warm and fuzzy on the inside. But we get into some combat. We're taking out some pirates here. These pirates are, I guess, a bunch of weaklings because they only go down a few shots. But we also see some friendlies over here by like the entrance to this base here. Also some different turrets and stuff that we haven't seen before in terms of Galactic Federation tech. Of course, we've seen turrets from the Galactic Federation, but these ones are at least of a different shape. It's not any sort of like class turret that we've seen either in Echoes or Corruption. Some of the ones in Corruption are more kind of like more not spindly, but like the barrels and like the cannons themselves are like really thin, while the whole emplacement is roughly like the same size. So maybe this is, I haven't played Federation Force myself, so maybe this is more in line with like Federation Force in terms of like the look of it, but it's not the same art style. So maybe it's just some new tech. Maybe we're far along in the future to where This is just some new technology we haven't seen. Got some standard barricades, nothing too crazy. Some of the ships, though, that we'll get a better shot of some of the ships later on, but some of the ships are different and new, too, that we don't see. But we have some friendlies here, and with the motion sensor, it'll show them as, I believe, little green circles. So it shows friendlies, and maybe that kind of gives off the potential for there being almost like a Halo-style NPC. I mean, we did have like the NPCs in Corruption, but they didn't really feel like the Marines from Halo. I don't know. They just kind of felt like it was more like scripted sort of cutscenes, and they were there in the action, as opposed to them being like their own AI and them like having these big AI battles with other enemies and stuff. And this didn't feel quite like the traditional FPS non-player characters or like friendly teammates in other games. So maybe they're kind of more in the traditional aspect now, but we'll keep going here because I'm already pretty far along into this. Yep, so we get to see the missiles in action. It's a bit of a smaller opening in the barrel here, but it still takes that Prime 2, Prime 3 sort of design for the barrel opening for the missiles. And then, yeah, we get a missile count. Maybe the dashes will go down depending on how many missiles are shot. So, and then we have those green circles for the friendlies up here in the top left corner. So, some nice differences, but we'll keep going here. Also, the map being blue, we'll see that the doors list themselves as red. Not sure how the doors are going to work in a game like this, because the doors have always been kind of color-coded. Maybe they'll just flip the colors to mean different things. But in the prior games, we've had different beams to open up different doors, or different weapons, different like special abilities that we needed to open up certain doors to progress. And so those will probably be different colored. I hope we have more of the same there. I'm sure that we will. It's just kind of how Metroid Prime games work, and Metroid games in general. So we'll go from there. Also, we have a little bit of a nod to Corruption, where the space pirate frigates and the spaceships up there in the sky are the same design, of course, a little bit updated as they were in Corruption. Some of the smaller fighters are a bit different. Let me see if I can... Oh, okay, that guy's going to be really hard to get. Let's see, I'm at 43. Oh, there we go. Okay, I got a good shot. This looks more similar to the Zero Mission style of space pirate fighter. Definitely didn't have these in the Prime series. I know this probably looks extremely blurry, so I'm so sorry. Maybe I can like kind of fix up the quality here real quick. Well, I guess that doesn't really help at the moment, but yeah, I think this kind of has a nice little mesh of like the Zero Mission and the earlier style ships, combined with the Prime game stuff for like the big carriers and the flagships of like the pirate battle fleets and stuff. So some cool variations. Maybe I'm just completely wrong too. I thought I saw something like similar. Of course, it's not going to be exactly this, but it also reminds me almost of a Seraph from Halo Reach too, with like sort of the teardrop shape, and there's like the spiked tails kind of coming out of it, and just kind of sci-fi ship, different and new for Metroid, but not quite like super new for the sci-fi angle, but new and exciting. Always new and exciting stuff. So let's keep going here. And we just have some more wreckage. We got that little like barrel piping or whatever that rolls down. So not really too much to see here. But then we get to the scan visor. There we go, let that play out for a sec. The scan visor. Also in the bottom left corner of combat visor, just the main visor while the arm cannon is up, we don't have anything showing visors at all. I wonder if visors will still be a mechanic. That's kind of what makes Prime different from the other Metroid games too, is having these different visors. So I'm just not sure what they would be regulated to if they're not just shown on the screen in terms of like button presses and controls. It seems like the scan visor itself has its own dedicated button, It seems like a lot of people are in agreement with me on that as well. But it's just very, very smooth and kind of quick. I mean, the actual like scanning process of like pointing and scanning and getting that load bar to fill up seems roughly about the same. But it's nice that we brought back the sort of like anatomy. I mean, not quite like anatomical pictures of creatures and stuff for damage, but it's kind of that nice mix of like we're not just showing all of the guts and the organs of these impending corpses, because this guy is like barely moving, he's still alive, and it shows vital signs are weak and deteriorating. But I mean, internal organ failure and biofluid hemorrhage confirmed. Like this game's gonna be brutal. We got the blood splattered on the wall. Like this guy got pretty messed up by maybe the pipe, maybe he got blown up and hit by some shrapnel and stuff. But he's down for the count. This guy's out. And just seeing these very detailed, we were going for almost like the small dots 3D sort of shapes. I'm sure there's a specific name for that, for like the type of hologram, but you know, it's kind of like the really like small like dots and pixels to make it into like a 3D shape, which I do like that design. I feel like that fits well for Metroid in particular. And we're going more for that Prime 1 style of having like the blues and the oranges for like weapons or like important things to look at, and not quite being able to see like the interior and the anatomy of enemies that have been like shot in the gut or like they're bleeding out or whatever. But I mean, we still have like some damage little stuff here, some little notifications for maybe like gosh, I can't think, biofuel percentage, or it's like hemorrhaging and other like medical sort of things there. So nice details there. But would love to see how the scan visor really works in terms of like stuff that's logbook oriented or stuff that's recorded for later, because this just shows, you know, it's one of those like basic scans to add some details to the environment. It shows alien morphology. It's a space pirate. We know this. Subject is heavily injured with reduced combat ability. It's just one of those basic scans to give some more detail to the environment that we're in. So it's nothing that is recorded. Wonder if it will say like logbook record or logbook recorded up here, or maybe down here in the text. Maybe it'll kind of pull like a Prime 2, and there'll be some. You'll be pressing whatever button to press to, like let's say it's A. You'll be pressing A to read through all of the text that's here for like a boss or maybe a log. Be like, oh, the log has been translated or the log has been encrypted. And then you'll press pause after the small little blurb telling you, oh, this is a logbook, this is what the logbook is called, or this is what the boss is called, here's the hint. Maybe you could press like the pause button, and then it'll take you to the logbook like it did in Prime 2. Maybe show you like a 3D model or more photos with like a longer description of like the lore and the more details behind the boss and the actual logbook and things like that. But we don't have any recorded logbooks in this teaser, so it's all just speculation for now. But I'm thinking they might go, I hope they go more like the Prime 2 route instead of Prime 3, to where there's like a model or like kind of some photos or something to look at instead of just a big wall of text that you scroll through. I thought that there was kind of left some more to be desired out of the Prime 3 logbook, but I'm pretty sure this one will be pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of real estate and a lot of room here to add some more stuff. I mean, they only give 4 lines of text here, or at least 4 lines to be filled with text for scan logs, so hoping there's some like multi-page potential with the scan log, so just give that potential for a lot more detail. Would love to see more detail, but we'll keep going here. Sorry, we'll back up just a smidgen. We want to catch the scan visor. Seems like we're a little backwards on the colors now. Wonder if that will get changed. But first, the arm cannon is still up in this scan mode. Just the reticule is changed. So maybe that leads to faster transitions, and if for some reason you get caught with the scan visor up in combat, or you're in combat trying to scan a creature or something, it'll lead to a quick transfer back to being able to fight back and kill whatever you're scanning. So that's an interesting little change. Wonder how that'll affect other visors, if there will be any. But what I want to talk about are the colors. Normally green indicates that this has been an item that has already been scanned, but it seems like we're going to change that. If I back up a little more, yeah, it seems like the color for stuff that is waiting to be scanned but isn't really important is green. And stuff that has been scanned is almost like this, like really pale blue. That's what it turns to now. So a little bit opposite as before. So for a veteran that's biased like myself, might take some getting used to. But I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, it's green versus blue. Eventually, when I do play this game, I'll want to do a 200% completion to it, which is getting all scans and getting all items. So it's just a kind of a minor like cosmetic change, making it green instead of blue. So no big deal. I'm just thought it was an interesting change to point out. And small thing, really small thing. Normally in the Prime games, you're gonna have to go into Morphball mode and lay a bomb first to break grates and stuff like this, because they're made out of like telluric alloy or whatever the material is called. That's like weak to Morphball bombs. But now we can just shoot those things. Pretty nice. Makes it a lot quicker. Instead of roll, stop, lay bomb, blows up, then roll, it's like shoot, roll, and go in. And also the transformation, let's see if I can get it. I'm really bad at this, guys. I'm so sorry. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Well, at least when it comes to this sort of like transition here, there's like a lot more like electricity going on in the change to Morph Ball, which I think is cool. It really kind of shows that like, the little ball of energy is a lot of energy going on inside there. As opposed to, and the inside little like energy inside of like the Morph Ball like metal exterior always kind of made me think of like those little Tesla balls. God, what are they called? Those little things that like they're little orbs, and you put your fingers up to them, and there's like the little electric current that like touches your finger and like reaches it on the sphere. You know what I'm talking about? I'm dumb. I can't remember the name, but it kind of reminds me of that a little bit by looking at the inside with like the pulsing energy and stuff going on. But this is a little bit more like electrical instead of like sci-fi like waves of energy, you know what I mean? But we go into a Morph Ball hull here. We have a Morph Ball HUD, very minimalistic, again, like always, which is great. Shows that we have some Morph Ball bombs here, traditional 3, which will be great. Just a classic number 3, nothing really to say there. I wonder how they will treat bomb jumping, or if they'll have maybe the spring ball in this, since there is that motion capability with the Switch Joy-Cons, and whatever the controller will be called with Switch 2 may have the same capability, or at least enough maybe to do like a flick or like a point with infrared like here and there or stuff. Who knows about the second console? We have no clue. But at least with the original, with Joy-Cons, I want them to bring the spring ball back. It was always a nice quality of life change when playing the trilogy version of Metroid Primes 2, 1 and 2. It was nice to have that, and made certain bosses like the Spider Guardian and Echoes a lot easier. So I wonder if the spring ball will come back. But we have bombs for now, and we have the Morph Ball. No sign of the Spider Ball or Boost Ball or Power Bombs. So maybe there'll be some new power-ups there. I mean, I feel like it's difficult to I'm not a smart guy, so these guys at Nintendo know what they're doing here, but I feel like it's difficult to find a way to innovate the Morph Ball in a 3D space without really changing inherently what it does, or maybe breaking the game. Because like if we had the Spider Ball work how it did in the 2D games, we could just climb up any wall, then that just breaks the game. Like, it's just as simple as that. So I don't know if we could incorporate something like the cross bomb from Dread in this. I don't think so, but at least in terms of the Morph Ball and its future upgrades, I think we'll maybe just they might stay with the status quo here, which will be fun. It'd be fun to interact with and use the boost ball and see how fast that goes there, and maybe some spider ball tracks. See those make a return, but we don't see any of that here yet. So we'll keep going. And we got these guys here, these little space pirates, trying to using some sort of like door breaching device to get inside. We'll see what they're trying to get after here in just a second. All right. This is one of the main scenes that people have been kind of pausing and stopping on. First, wow, energy tank. Everybody's making the joke that energy tanks are coming back. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be? But they have a nice, again, more with like the electrical kind of aesthetic to it for the energy tank, and just kind of the overall energy that Samus emits when doing things. Is a cool change. It kind of shows that there's a lot more power behind the woman in the armor. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot more like it's like exciting. No, that's not really the right word for it. It's again, I'm rambling. I'm so sorry. It's like, it's a lot more like energetic. There's a lot more stuff going on. There's a lot more like action when there's like lightning bolts and shock and static electricity like going on here, instead of just being like, oh, it's a blue light. Da-da-da, here it is, like energy tank. So there's just a lot more like excitement going on. That's kind of what I mean by that. Also, a little minor detail, but it's always kind of been there. Enemies, and not sure about like the friendlies, but at least enemies will flash red when they get damaged. See a bit more of that later. But what everybody has been interested in is what that little device in the background is. Some people have thought that it's the shape of the new logo, which I disagree. It almost looks like, again, I'm making a Halo comparison here, which is blasphemy of me, but if we think of Halo 2, and we think of the planetary defense system that's around Earth, are kind of like these big like space stations with like a column in the center, and they're like roughly like rhombus square shaped with their hallways, maybe a little bit more circular in Halo's case, but they kind of have this overall shape to it. That's what it made me immediately think of, but obviously this isn't a space station. This is some sort of artifact, some sort of piece of tech from some sort of alien race that the Galactic Federation wants and wants to keep away from the pirates, and the pirates want. Which makes me think it's like some sort of, maybe not a weapon, but some sort of tool to give the pirates an upper hand with something. Don't know what that would be yet. Also, talk about the troopers. They kind of look more, I don't want to say Other M-ish, but again, the armor is like a lot more sleek. It's not the super bulky like metal chrome design from Echoes, and it's a bit sleeker than the Prime through Corruption suits and armor and guns that they have. Like they actually have like rifles that aren't attached to their person. They're separate weapons, just kind of like regular guns in our modern day. So that's an interesting change. But they still got like the space suits going on. They still got the blues and the grays. So, that's our boys in gray fighting off the space pirates and trying to hold them off from whatever this artifact is. But it's got to be, the easy answer would be it's some sort of weapon. It's some sort of like weapon of mass destruction to give the pirates upper hand and wipe out whatever. Doesn't really seem like that's what the spin that Metroid goes for. It always seems to go under the kind of the premise that it's an artifact, or in Phazon's case, like if we give Phazon an example here, it's a substance or it's some sort of material that they can weaponize in a way to support themselves, to make themselves either more aggressive, more powerful, but the item itself inherently is not a weapon. So I wouldn't think this would be like some sort of like violent tool or weapon of some kind. Maybe it's information for something. Maybe logbooks of like Federation trade posts, or like information about the Federation and their doings. I doubt that. I think it's more of like artifact of some alien race that exists. Maybe it's a new alien race. Maybe it's something that's Chozo related. I don't think it's Chozo. Kind of looks too like, not high tech, but like too high tech. You know what I mean? It looks too like technological, while the Chozo stuff looks like it's kind of, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Some sort of artifact. Don't think it's a weapon. Probably some sort of like support thing or access to something even greater on this planet or a different planet in this system that gives the pirates an upper hand against the Federation. But the Federation got to it first, which is interesting. So we're not going to know what that is until maybe another trailer. I doubt it. Probably just going to wait until the actual game. But the Federation's got it. Pirates can't have it because it's bad. And Samus is just rolling around in her little ventilation shaft bag energy tank. So, having a good time. We have drop pods. These drop pods look a little bit different. I mean, they've had a similar concept in Corruption. Never really like dropped through a roof like this, and they weren't really metallic. They're more almost like metal and organic in nature. But also just the stylized differences of the pirates in this game seem like it's kind of a mix almost of all three games, mainly 1 and 2. Mainly Metroid Prime 1 because we have like the purples and little bits of like green and stuff for the decals and like their eyeballs, and some of their weapons are like yellow, green. And then Prime 2 with kind of like the armor that's on here with like the pointy shoulder blades is the main giveaway, but they got some helmets there. And then a little bit of Prime 3 because they have like the split mandible for their mouth. They didn't have that in, I guess they had that in Prime 2, I think, but they didn't have that in Prime 1. So it's at least a little bit of a mix of Prime 1 and Echoes with maybe a little bit of inspiration from Corruption with at least maybe like the legs and kind of like the joints for their leg design. Shoot, now I'm trying to think. I can't think. I think this was mainly like a Corruption thing. I'm probably wrong. No, I think I am wrong. I think Prime 1 had these like kind of like Sangili Elite sort of like bent knees and multiple joints in their legs. But anyway, pirates looking great. I think this, like, it's not cartoony. I wouldn't call it cartoony. But this, like, more animated sort of a style for Metroid, I think looks fantastic. It's not the chibi art style of Federation Forge, which I think is, like, too much of an extreme. And it's not, like, super, like, nitty-gritty, everything's realistic, like a lot of these, like, more modern games are going for, you know what I mean? So I think this is a great middle ground in between it all, and Metroid is a great IP to really have that middle ground for. I just think it fits so well. But we have some more combat. We have like the friendlies and the foe dots again, and this is what makes me think that it's the friendlies are more like traditional FPS like, because it seems like they're actually like shooting some of these guys and they're drawing some attention away from the pirates, and they're actually like helping you in combat. Of course, they won't be like the end-all be-all, like they'll just go steamroll these guys, but it actually seems like, they're putting in some damage and they're actually doing some work to help with the pirate offensive, which makes this whole scenario, like, I feel a lot more immersed, Samus, being the ultimate warrior that she is, already a freight train and plows through these space pirates like it's nothing. But it's nice to also seem like that you're this intergalactic bounty hunter getting caught up or helping out the Federation, the fellow humans, in this giant conflict, potentially planet-wide, potentially solar system-wide conflict for this artifact. So it's nice to be, I like being part of that grand scheme of things, but hopefully that sticks with just the introduction for the game and not throughout the whole game, because that doesn't really feel like Metroid if it's all like combat and all like running around with a bunch of soldiers and dudes and fighting space pirates the whole time. That wouldn't really make it feel like Metroid. But we got the charge beam here, which is really small. At least the actual like buildup is really small by comparison, but it still has some pretty great results. Also the details of like the energy and like maybe like the flames kind of coming out of the cracks of the arm cannon are cool. But yeah, more combat, always fun. And there's like little bits of like shifting and wobbling with the arm cannon itself when we do strafe dodges left and right here. So before we get to the badass entrance. Just wanted to mention that plane that kind of looks different. Um, for those of you that have played like Battalion Wars, now this is going to be a really weird reference to some of you here. Like, what the hell is Battalion Wars? It looks like the fighter jets from the Solar Empire from Battalion Wars. I don't know. That's just kind of what I thought of when I first saw them. I mean, they're a little bit more like scrunched up and a bit like thicker. The Solar Empire stuff is like more like thinner and sleek by design, but kind of gave you that. I mean, also just looks like a futuristic version of like, military planes. I don't know names of military planes, but the main one that's like used in like Top Gun and like those kind of like military Air Force movies and stuff kind of looks like a futuristic version of that too. But nonetheless, we'll move on here to the main event. We got our boy Sylux back from Metroid Prime Hunters. Not quite sure how this works, because there's a cutscene in Metroid Prime Hunters when you reach the final boss, to where you have all of the Amblic shards, and, you know, overall you have all these different hunters that are searching for the ultimate power, right? And Sylux, being one of them, is there in the final boss room fighting, is that Goria, I think is the name of the final boss. It's like what the ultimate weapon like is being guarded by, I guess, or it's like this ancient evil of some other civilization that doesn't really make an appearance again in the Metroid series at all. But they're all there. They're like shooting this thing, and then Goria just like activates and like all these little tentacles come out, and they like suck like the life force and energy out of all of them. And like, you know, I would think that means that they die, right? Like, it kind of pulls like a Metroid, but in a multi-organism scale, and it like sucks the energy out of these guys. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what happens in the cutscene, and it like hits all of the hunters, and it's presumed that they're at least unconscious. I don't know. Like, I feel like that's a bit of a stretch, but not really sure how Sylux is here. I'm sure we'll get some sort of background as to how and why he's here and like what his motivations are as a villain, but I mean, at the moment, him being here is cool. It's great, even. I mean, his big-ass gun, his, like, super badass, like, walk in with his little space pirate homies and his mock droids. Not Metroids, but mock droids. We'll get to that here in a sec. Is great. He just looks like such a badass villain, and he looks like he'll be such a great rival for Samus in this new game here. But in terms of the lore, I feel like it doesn't make sense at the moment, but we'll see what they say. Excited to have him here, but I'm just like a little confused. I'm like, how is he here? Why is he here? We won't know. But we'll get a different snapshot here. So we have him and his blue and his green accents. Seems like Metroid really loves green accents, but these guys are mock droids. They are not real Metroids. What do I mean by this? So, if you look at a Metroid in the 2D games, there are 3 nuclei that are in like a triangle sort of pattern that just are the internal organs of the Metroid. And then there's like that sort of green like external barrier that shows like the gelatinous sort of flesh, I guess, of the Metroid. And then they have the signature like 4 talons, but it looks like these ones have a lot more talons, which is interesting. They have like some kind of smaller inner ones and some bigger ones, maybe for like grappling or for fighting. But these ones are mock droids. In Super Metroid, there is kind of a one-off enemy in no. Okay, I won't mention the name because I can't. I feel terrible. I don't remember the name of it. I'm spacing when I need my information most. There's a certain area in the game where they kind of show and reveal that the space pirates of that game have been trying and using like beta waves and like radioactivity or like, you know, something to try and replicate the Metroids instead of breeding them like in the Prime games. And it kind of creates, I guess the Metroids go through some sort of like asexual like reproduction from that, or they can like, you know, split off and create multiple Metroids, but they're not as strong. And they're represented by this by being like, they look a little bit more feeble, but I mean, these ones don't. These ones look like they're regular Metroids, but the nuclei is different. But the main kicker is that there's only one nuclei, or like one like ball, one organ in the middle, instead of there being three in a triangle pattern. So these guys are definitely Metroids. That's me being like a giga nerd here for a sec. But they're Metroids. So maybe Silex from the ending of Federation Force, when he like hatches a Metroid egg and presumably takes the Metroid for his own evil plot. Maybe he kind of pulls a Super Metroid from the space parts there, and he like attempts to clone them through like beta or gamma rays or something, but he only gets Metroids, so they're not super strong. But also he's somehow controlling them. And the only way we've really known that Metroids can be controlled are either by a Queen Metroid, which that would be absolutely bonkers if we had a Queen Metroid, or like some giant like late stage Metroid fight in a first person game. That would be insane from a nerd standpoint. I think it'd also just be really cool from a gameplay, but that's just me. But what seems to be the more likely option is that there's some sort of like AI or like a program that helps him control it through telepathic means. That was Mother Brain originally, and then MB, the android from Other M. So maybe there's a similar concept here, that there's like a chip that he has inserted in his brain. Maybe it's like some sort of like external tech that's like strapped onto his like wrist or his arm, or maybe it's like a backpack or something that like helps him control these Metroids. Or maybe they'll just say that the Metroids are different and don't require that telepathy to control them. I wouldn't think so, but I mean, because they're pretty much Metroids. I mean, these guys look like they're Metroids, but the only difference being the nuclei and maybe some of the teeth. But it's like, generally speaking, in the lore, there's been like telepathic communication between the control, or the controller, I guess, which normally is Mother Brain, was an android at one point in Other M in the game that nobody likes. Or it was just like a Queen Metroid and her babies. So thinking there's some sort of like high-tech thing going on with Silex's new suit. Maybe he's more of a robot than like a humanoid thing. I mean, because there's a lot of like kind of like, I don't know, metallic-y parts and stuff going on in like the neck, like undersuit area. Could be wrong. Maybe he just is like a regular dude. Who knows? But we just don't really know a lot about Silex or what's going on with these Metroids, which is very exciting. But I just want more information, and I don't have it here, which I feel terrible. But we'll just back up a little bit, and we'll listen to that cool kick-ass guitar riff for Silex's entrance real quick. He's just so cool. He's just so sick. I was never really like a Silex fanboy when it came to like Prime Hunters, I guess. But I mean, I can admit that Silex is cool, and like he looks pretty damn sick in this trailer. Plus, also another snapshot of Samus's helmet. We got the reflection going on in there. You can't really see anything behind the visor, but we got that little like triangular pattern going on here, which is new. But yeah. And Metroid Beyond for the Nintendo Switch. It's definitely a Switch game. I'm thinking it will also be a Switch 2 game. If for some reason they're not launched, like if they're not like a Breath of the Wild and they're not launched at like the same time, maybe later on they'll just have like this is the Switch 2 version, or you can plug in your original chip and there's like a graphical sort of update. There's like higher resolution to it if you play it on the new console. Maybe something like that. Don't know anything about that yet, but we can confirm this is a Nintendo Switch game, which I am super excited for, that I don't have to buy a new console. But let's be honest, if this thing comes out on the new console, I'm buying the new console anyways. Like, I have to. It's my obligation as a Mega Metroid fan to buy the new console and play the new game if it's on the new console. But what I wanted to get at here was not so much the background, because some people had said, like I said, mentioned earlier, that it looks like the artifact thing earlier that the Galactic Federation is trying to keep for themselves. I don't think so. I think maybe there's something going on with like the black hole, wormhole, like space going on in the background. Not sure about that. What I'm focused on is the Beyond subtitle here, because it seems like every time there has been a subtitle, it had saying it had a meaning kind of doesn't really make a lot of sense. What I mean by this is that Prime 1 didn't have a subtitle, but that was just kind of like, this is the jump to 3D Metroid. Prime itself was kind of almost the subtitle, if that makes sense. This is three-dimensional Metroid, and this is Metroid Prime. We get to Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Echoes kind of, I feel like, is in reference to mainly like the story of the game. How there's like the Luminoth threat, there's the dark and the light worlds, and the Luminoth are getting killed out. There's a lot of like war, death, and suffering kind of a thing. But and also that kind of indirectly alludes to that there's the dark and the light mechanic, there's the portals, there's the weapons, there's the naming conventions. If you saw my Echoes review, the naming conventions certainly are original and unique. Of course. And then we go to corruption, which that's like the whole gimmick of the game, right? It's corruption. It's Phazon being pumped into people and being used as a gun, as a weapon, and the repercussions of said experimental weapon during the ending of like the main pirate conflict. So, what on earth could Beyond mean? Some people have theorized that maybe this is like a black hole or wormhole, so maybe it's beyond the known realm of like Metroid solar systems and stuff, but we've kind of already touched that when traveling to Phase through a wormhole, so I don't know if they'll go that route. I'm like completely stumped. I don't know what Beyond could mean. That's really the only like one like theory that I've heard of that makes sense at the moment. But other than that, man, I got nothing. Like, Beyond is a very like mysterious title to it. So maybe like a year or two after the game has come out, I'm not sure how I'll feel about the name after that. But I mean, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, we got the name. We're here. What a time to be alive, right? It's great. But that's not the end of the trailer. We still got 30 seconds. Oh, poor blurred guy here. The more I think about this, I originally thought it was a door, but like it shimmers a ton. When we play it here, if we focus on like the blue and like the shine there, it shimmers. So maybe it's more of a portal. I guess for some reason it still could be a door, and like maybe this is just a really like high resolution like glimmery door for whatever planet this is. But I'm thinking that somehow more along the lines of we got portals back, like Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. So, not sure how I feel about that yet. Not sure how that will be incorporated, but maybe this is a portal. I think it's more like, I want to say like 70-30, like 70 portal, 30 for a door, but no idea. Not sure about that guy there. This is all kind of going into predictions and speculation now. I don't really have any more like nitpicks or information, but we also got these little bird things here. Maybe this is the new Shriek Bat. I feel like there's always a Shriek Bat in every Prime game, so maybe this is somehow like a different variation of the Shriek Bat. Hashtag Shriek Bat Prime 4. We got some like weird kind of like netting sort of vines on the trees here. I wonder, throwing something out of left field here, I wonder if that's going to be like a climbing mechanic. Haven't really heard anybody talk about that yet, but it could purely just be design of the trees and the vines. But I'm thinking, I want to throw out that wild prediction that this is somehow like, you know how in Prime 1, you're entering the Talon overworld and you're in that main hub where there's like the big half pipe that you would need boost ball to get up to get space jump boots. Maybe this is something like that. Maybe this is early on in the game where it's like, oh, I see some things. I see some stuff, but I'm not really sure how to interact with it. Maybe this is one of those things. I could be completely wrong on this. Like I said, I just wanted to throw something wild out there. But maybe this is some sort of like climbing mechanic. Maybe it's climbing. Maybe it's grappling. Maybe it's spider ball. For some reason, they didn't go with like the traditional magnetic rails, but I feel like something's there. Something. Not sure what. First, the music is great. Love the music. Gives that kind of reminiscence of Phendrana Drifts with the piano. But again, we're going with more of like a choir sort of a focus here. We got a lot of like humanoid voices in the background, not really being like a tribal chant per se, but just like, it's more human. There's a lot more like choir and vocals going on in the background, which I think would make this soundtrack a lot more unique and special, and would definitely set it apart from the other games. So far the music has been great. 10 out of 10. Love it. The few seconds of tracks that I've heard, fantastic. 2025, I'm like, damn, I hate waiting. Wish I could play this game right now, of course, because I'm impatient, but 2025 makes me think that there is great potential for this being a Switch 2. I don't think it'll be a launch game. There's always a possibility it'll be a launch game. I don't think so. Metroid has never sold that much to be a launch game, to really, because like it's great numbers if we sell like 3 million. And there's other games that, double and triple that number easily. So I don't think Metroid Prime 4 will be a launch title, even though I really hope it would be. I think it'll be in the first year of whatever the new Switch 2 console is. Assuming that console gets unveiled in like the first half of 2025. Potentially maybe this is just a Switch game. I feel like that'd be kind of weird if it was just a Switch game with how like soon-ish the next generation of Nintendo console is coming out, but just kind of my thoughts. I feel like it's possible that it's just a Switch game, but I think that's unlikely. I think it'll be both a Switch and whatever Switch 2 will be game. Maybe at the same time, maybe not at the same time, but I don't think it'll be a launch game. It just doesn't have the... Unfortunately, Metroid, my favorite series, doesn't have the launch sales for that, which hurts my heart, but we'll move on. Giant tree. Crazy giant tree. We got some like other kind of like plant life going on over here, almost maybe like giant vines, maybe like giant flowers. It's kind of hard to see. But also when the trailer is playing, there's like little like speckles of light that kind of drop down from the giant tree here in the background. Also, big bridge. Also, maybe a little building of some sort over here. So what that just makes me think of is that there's at least a civilization that is here on whatever planet this is that isn't tribal, but maybe isn't super futuristic. Maybe we have some sort of like new species or new alien race that is like middle ground in terms of tech. Because this doesn't look like it's super like high tech or like digital or science fiction. This just kind of looks like a very, maybe not super ornate, but like an ornate like stonework bridge. You know what I mean? It's made out of like the local resources of the planet, and it's made out of some sort of rock. And then we have that sort of like building that's over there, or whatever that is, that little like pole tower thing overlooking the bridge. But new and exciting stuff in 2025, so not there yet. Also, just this whole room just seems like it's going to show off that these rooms are bigger, more expansive, but I'm not sure about open world. Maybe there'll be some kind of open world-ish aspects. Maybe there'll be like 2 or 3 rooms that are absolutely massive, right? Maybe they got like 10 different doors, 20 different doors, so many different locations to go run to and explore. But like those big giant like intersections will be once in a while. And then everything else will be like highly detailed or like have a lot of life breathed into them, but they're still big rooms by comparison. That's what I'm thinking is more likely. I don't know how I feel about it being like an open world, but at the very least, I think if we jump back to the start-ish here, where we have like Samus jumps out of the ship and we have her like controlling her ship to go fly away to a different location, I'm thinking that means that we have multiple planets. Sure, it's potentially just a cutscene, Again, could be wrong in that prediction, but I'm thinking that this game goes the Prime 3 route, and we have at least a couple of planets to fly to and to explore at the same time. But those same planets will be a lot larger in comparison, so the possibilities are endless. But just from those small details, I'm throwing a prediction out there. We got multiple planets, and the planets themselves are big. Big, detailed, lots of rooms, lots of things to explore. That's what I'm thinking. But other than that, that is pretty much it. Yeah, that's all we got. And that was the end of the direct. So, thank you guys for watching. This is definitely going to be a long one. Like I said, it's an overanalyzation of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I am very, very excited. I wish I could have recorded my reaction and showed it to you guys, but I was out of town at the time. But I made sure to wake up and watch it. Don't you best believe it. But Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, those are some of my thoughts and a couple of predictions. Please tell me what you think. Any predictions? Any thoughts on this? Would love to hear it in the comments down below. But for now, I will see you guys in the next video. Pieces, guys. It's hard to contain my excitement, but we're almost in the home stretch. We're so close. 2025 is not far off. Hopefully it's in the first half of 2025. So if we think about it, if it's in the first half of 2025, we're less than a year away from having our grubby little hands on this awesome new game. Can't wait for it. But for now, see you guys later.